My family stayed silent for months after my sister sold the painting I inherited from Grandpa to fund an apartment. When I discovered it, they just shrugged and said, "Don't be so selfish." So I made one call and now they're in hot water. I never really felt like I belonged with them, and it's hard to admit, but that's always been my truth. I'm Amelia, and I've spent most of my life living in the shadow of my older sister, Olivia. Growing up in our small house, it was clear who the favorite was, Olivia. In our parents' eyes, she could do no wrong, even when she made mistakes. And trust me, she made plenty. Mom and Dad would simply smile and say, "That's our Olivia." It seemed as if even her errors had a certain charm. Meanwhile, every little misstep of mine was noted. "Amelia, sit up straight. Amelia, your grades could be better. Amelia, why can't you be more like your sister?" Olivia was always the benchmark. The only person who ever made me feel truly valued was my grandfather, Grandpa Mike. He was a rugged man with a tender heart. He lived in a big house across town, and visiting him was like stepping into a world where I wasn't constantly compared to Olivia. "You remind me so much of your grandmother," he would say as we stood before an old portrait in his living room. A picture of a mysterious 19th century woman who, according to him, resembled Grandma, who passed away when I was 12. "And you look just like her, Amelia. You've got that same fire in your eyes." I never quite understood what he meant, but his words made me feel seen, like I belonged somewhere, even if not at home. Matters worsened when Olivia dropped out of college in her junior year. Mom and Dad had taken out loans to pay for her education, saving every penny they could, but Olivia had bigger plans. She was launching a business with her best friend Rachel. "It's going to be huge, we're the next big thing," she'd boast. Mom and Dad nodded along, proud of their entrepreneurial daughter, never mentioning the wasted tuition or looming loans. On my 18th birthday, we had a modest celebration at home. Just family and a few neighbors. I expected a few gift cards or clothes, nothing more. Then something happened that completely shocked me. After cutting the cake, Grandpa Mike stood and tapped his glass with a spoon to get everyone's attention. "I have an announcement," he said, his voice echoing through our small living room. "Amelia, I've watched you grow into an incredible young woman. You work hard, you're kind, and you deserve a shot at your dreams." He pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to me. "I've paid for your college tuition in full. All 4 years, wherever you want to go." I could hardly breathe. The room fell silent as I opened the envelope with trembling hands, staring at the documents that guaranteed my future. I started to thank him, but words failed me, and I simply threw my arms around him, tears streaming down my face. That's when Mom cleared her throat. "Dad, can we talk to you for a minute?" she said, her tone tight and controlled. "Whatever you have to say, say it here," Grandpa replied, still holding me close. "This is very generous," Mom began. "But wouldn't it be better to use that money to help Olivia with her business? She's really struggling." "Excuse me," Grandpa interrupted firmly. "This is my money. I decide where it goes. Olivia made her choice when she dropped out. Amelia deserves this chance." I'll never forget the look on my parents' faces. They were angry that I was getting an opportunity. Olivia glared at me from across the room, her eyes burning with resentment. "Well," Dad finally said, forcing a smile, "this is quite a surprise." The rest of the party was filled with tension, but for once I didn't care. Someone had chosen me. Someone had noticed me. I applied to colleges out of state, places as far away as I could get, and in August I packed my bags and left without looking back. I visited Grandpa's house during breaks but avoided my parents' home as much as possible. Whenever I did go back, the only conversation was about Olivia's business, how it was about to take off, how she was making connections, how success was just around the corner. Meanwhile, Olivia constantly complained about the injustice of Grandpa not giving her money for her business. "It's his greed that's holding me back from success," she would whine over dinner during holiday breaks. I could only nod and count the hours until I returned to campus, where at least I felt I belonged. Everything changed during my 3rd year of college. I was studying for midterms when my phone rang. "Mom, Amelia," her voice sounded strangely flat. "Your grandfather died this morning. The funeral is on Saturday." I felt numb on the trip home. Grandpa Mike had been the one constant in my life, the only person who truly saw me, and now he was gone. I managed to get emergency leave from the dean's office and caught the first bus available. When I arrived at my parents' house, the atmosphere was odd. There was sadness, sure, but also an undercurrent of anticipation. My parents greeted me with mechanical hugs. "How are you holding up?" I asked Mom, remembering she'd just lost her father. "It's hard," she replied, her voice void of real emotion. "We're handling the arrangements. The funeral is tomorrow, and the reading of the will is scheduled for the day after." At dinner, no one spoke of Grandpa, no mention of his life, his stories, or his meaning to us. Instead, the conversation kept drifting to his house, his possessions, and what would happen to them now. "It's a big house for just one person," Dad remarked. "Such a shame it's been half empty all these years." "Grandpa liked his space," I said defensively. "Sure, but it's practical," Mom added. "We need to consider what happens next." The funeral was small and efficient. I cried throughout while my family stayed composed. A few of Grandpa's old friends came, sharing stories that made me smile through my tears. But whenever I looked at my family, they seemed detached, just waiting for it all to end. The next day, we gathered at the notary's office. Mr. Peterson, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, greeted us with a solemn, "I'm sorry for your loss." Mike was a good man and a longtime client. He updated his will just last month. That announcement caught everyone's attention. My parents exchanged glances before Mr. Peterson continued, "Let's begin." He opened a folder and read through the formal language. "To my daughter, Susan Wilson, I leave my house and all its contents except for the items specifically mentioned below. To my granddaughter, Olivia Wilson, I leave the sum of $50,000 for her business development." Olivia's eyes widened. "Not a fortune, but something." "To my granddaughter, Amelia Wilson, I leave a 19th century painting that hangs in my living room." The room fell silent. Then Olivia scoffed. "Seriously? She gets an old painting?" She looked at me with a mix of relief and mockery. "Grandpa left you some incomprehensible nonsense," she sneered. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "There's more." He pulled another document from his folder. Mike had the painting appraised shortly before his death. The appraisers estimated its value at approximately $400,000. He handed me the appraisal documents, and the room went deathly silent. I stared at the paper in disbelief. $400,000 for that old painting? I thought, feeling everyone's eyes on me. Olivia had gone pale, and Mom and Dad wore expressions I couldn't read, shock and something else. Something calculating. The drive back home was painfully quiet. Once we arrived, Dad broke the silence. "We've decided to move into your grandfather's house," he announced. "It's bigger than this place, and it makes sense to use it instead of letting it sit empty." "What about this house?" I asked. "We're selling it," Mom replied, "and the money will go to Olivia to help with her business." So, Olivia would get the proceeds from the house sale on top of her $50,000 inheritance. I wondered if that was enough for her, but I didn't have to wait long. "This is so unfair," Olivia exploded, turning to me. "You don't deserve that painting. What do you know about art? You should give it to the family. It's my inheritance," I said firmly, anger bubbling up inside me. "Grandpa wanted me to have it. I'm not giving it away." I expected my parents to side with Olivia like they always did, but to my surprise, Mom stepped in. "Olivia, that's enough," she said gently. "There's no need to pressure your sister. The painting is Amelia's inheritance, just as the money is yours." I was stunned. Mom had never backed me against Olivia before. Felt strange, almost suspicious. The next few days passed in a blur. I spent most of my time at Grandpa's house, wandering through the rooms and remembering him. The painting still hung in its place of honor above the fireplace. I stood before it, studying the woman's face. Somehow, now that I really looked, she seemed familiar. One afternoon, Mom came by carrying boxes. She was already moving things. "What are you planning to do with the painting?" she asked casually. "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. She nodded and set down a box. "Don't worry about it. It can stay right where it is until you decide." I felt relieved. At least I didn't have to decide what to do with a valuable painting while I was still in college. A few days later, I returned to campus. Classes, study groups, and exams resumed, and I tried to focus on my studies to honor Grandpa's investment in my education. Weeks passed, and the raw grief gradually softened into something more manageable. Then one night as I was scrolling through social media, I froze. On my screen was a post from Olivia. A series of photos from a housewarming party in what looked like a brand new apartment downtown. The caption read, "New chapter, new place." I stared at the images in confusion. How could Olivia afford an apartment downtown, even with the money from Grandpa and the house sale? It seemed excessive for someone whose business was supposedly struggling. I called her. "Hey, congrats on the new place. It looks amazing," I said. "Why didn't you tell me about it?" she replied dismissively. "I'm busy with school." "Not like you could come to the party anyway." "Still, it's big news. How'd you swing it? Is the business doing that well?" There was a pause. "I've got to go, Amelia. Talk later," she said abruptly, leaving me with an uneasy feeling. A few months later, summer break arrived. Despite my misgivings about going back home, I packed my bags and headed to what was now my parents' house, Grandpa's old place. Walking up the familiar path felt strange knowing he wouldn't be there to greet me. Mom had redecorated some rooms, but the living room remained mostly unchanged. There it was, the painting still hanging above the fireplace. I stood before it, studying the woman's face, feeling a mix of grief, relief, and the heavy burden of memories. Grandpa was right. There was something in her eyes that reminded me of old photos of Grandma. That night at dinner, it was just the three of us. Dad talked about work, Mom shared the latest neighborhood gossip, and I offered brief updates on school. It felt almost normal, except for the unspoken tension over the apartment across town. So during a relaxed moment, I asked, "Did you sell the old house?" Mom and Dad exchanged a glance before Mom replied, "Yes, we did. We got a good price for it too." "And you used the money for Olivia's business?" I pressed. "That's right," Dad said, focusing on cutting his steak. "She needed the capital to expand." I nodded and took a sip of water before adding, "Speaking of Olivia, her new apartment downtown looks amazing. That must be expensive." My parents shifted uncomfortably. "Well," Mom said with a tight smile, "her business is doing quite well now. She can afford nice things." Something about Mom's tone didn't sit right with me. I remembered Olivia's evasiveness on the phone, and how quickly she hung up when I asked about finances. "That's great," I said, then asked, "What exactly is her business up to these days?" "Oh, Dad waved his hand vaguely. "Entrepreneurial stuff, marketing consultancy." I guess she was always the business-minded one. The conversation moved on, but my suspicions lingered. The next day I called Jamie, who was Rachel's brother. The same Rachel who was supposedly running this booming business with Olivia. "Hey Jamie, how's your summer going?" I asked after catching up a bit. "By the way, how's Rachel doing?" "Still working with Olivia." Jamie laughed. "If you can call it working. Those two are still playing entrepreneur. From what I've heard, they're not exactly shaking up the business world. They just love to boast about being big shots." My stomach tightened. Really? Because Olivia just bought a gorgeous downtown apartment. I assumed business was booming. "No way," Jamie replied, clearly surprised. "Rachel's still stuck in that tiny apartment with 2 roommates. They haven't struck gold or anything." After we hung up, I sat on my bed thinking, if Olivia's business isn't doing well, where did she get the money for that apartment? The house sale and Grandpa's $50,000 might cover it, but my parents said the sale money went into her business. I wandered into the living room again, drawn to the painting. Today something felt off. I stepped closer, examining the brush strokes and the way the light played across the canvas. It looked brighter somehow, almost new. A cold feeling washed over me as I lifted the frame from the wall. I turned it over, searching for the small marks I remembered from when Grandpa and I had looked at it. The tiny tear in the corner, a smudge of contrasting color, the artist's faded signature. They were all gone. This wasn't my painting, it was a fake. My hands trembled as I hung it back on the wall. Suddenly everything clicked. Olivia's new apartment, Mom's unusual support of my inheritance, and their insistence that the painting remain in this house. They had sold my painting, my inheritance, and used the money to buy Olivia an apartment. Then they replaced it with a forgery, thinking I wouldn't notice or care enough to check. I needed proof, and I needed to confront them when they couldn't talk their way out of it. That evening at dinner, Olivia joined us. I watched the way my family exchanged meaningful glances, carefully avoiding any mention of Olivia's apartment or my painting. They had no idea I was aware. As we sat at the table, I discreetly activated the voice recorder on my smartphone and placed it on my lap, ensuring it would capture every word. I've been thinking, I began reaching for the salt, that I might sell the painting. I've found some places near campus, and I could use the money for a down payment. The room fell silent. Finally, Mom cleared her throat. Honey, that painting is a family heirloom. You shouldn't sell it. Besides, Olivia quickly added, you don't need an apartment yet. There's still a year left in the dorms. I nodded thoughtfully, watching their reactions closely. Actually, I've already scheduled an appraiser to verify its authenticity tomorrow before I list it. At that, Olivia suddenly recoiled, tears welling up in her eyes, and the dam broke. Fine, I sold it. Okay, I sold your stupid painting, she cried. Mom and Dad looked at her in horror. Olivia's dad hissed, look at her face, she knows. Olivia pointed an accusing finger at me. I needed that money for my apartment. My business is failing, and you two wouldn't help me anymore. I set my fork down and met her gaze steadily. So you stole from me. We didn't steal, Mom interjected soothingly. We just reallocated family resources. Olivia needed a place to live, and you're still in college with everything paid for. This is what families do. They help each other. By committing fraud? I asked incredulously. By selling something that belongs to me without my knowledge or consent, and then replacing it with a fake? Don't be so dramatic, Dad waved dismissively. It's just a painting. You wouldn't even have space for it. It was my inheritance, I replied, my voice low and controlled despite the anger boiling inside me. The one thing Grandpa wanted me to have. What's done is done, Mom said with finality. These are family matters, Amelia. Family helps family. Don't be selfish. I stood up, my appetite gone. I want my painting back. That's enough. Mom stood as well, her face flushed with anger. I think you need to leave this house and reflect on your behavior. When you're ready to understand what family truly means, you can come back. Kick her out, Olivia urged. She's threatening us over a stupid painting. She doesn't deserve to be here. I looked at each of their faces, hardly recognizing the people who were supposed to love me. Without another word, I went upstairs, packed my things, and left. I only turned off the voice recorder once I was safely outside, making sure I had captured every incriminating word. I checked into a hostel, my mind racing. What was I going to do now? My phone buzzed nonstop with calls and messages from my parents and Olivia, but I ignored them all. Instead, I called the police and explained everything. My inheritance had been stolen, replaced with a forgery, and used to buy an apartment for my sister. The officer on the phone was sympathetic but cautious. This sounds like it might be a civil matter, ma'am. We'll look into it. Can you come to the station tomorrow morning? That night I barely slept. By morning my phone was flooded with angry messages from my family, accusing me of setting the police on them and being a selfish brat. Around noon, I received a call from the station asking me to come in. When I arrived, my parents and Olivia were already there, looking both furious and frightened. They began talking over each other as soon as they saw me. She's lying. This is just a family dispute. The painting was always meant to be shared. One of them insisted. Enough, the detective in charge said firmly. Miss Wilson, your family claims you fabricated this entire story. They say you created the forgery yourself to frame them. A cold wave of disbelief washed over me. That's absurd, I said, reaching for my phone. I have proof. I played the recording from dinner. Their voices were crystal clear as they admitted to selling my painting and replacing it with a fake. The room fell silent as their confession played for the detective. Olivia's face went white, Mom stared at the floor, and Dad couldn't meet anyone's eyes. I also have all the documentation for the painting, I continued, pulling out papers from my bag, the certificate of authenticity and appraisal documents. I'm willing to have the painting in your house examined by experts to prove it's a forgery. The detective nodded and took notes. This changes things. My parents and Olivia started pleading with me not to press charges, but I stood firm. I want to file a formal complaint, and I want my painting back. What followed was a whirlwind of police reports, investigations, and legal proceedings. The police tracked down the buyer, a wealthy collector who thought he was getting a genuine piece. The painting was seized as evidence, and a team of art experts confirmed it was indeed the original, valued at around $400,000. Meanwhile, Olivia was forced to sell her apartment to repay the buyer. She cooperated with the investigation, admitting her role in the scheme and explaining how she arranged for the forgery. The court acknowledged her cooperation and restitution, handing her a suspended sentence instead of jail time, and ordering her to pay me $100,000 in damages for emotional distress. Ironically, she had to borrow that money from our parents, who'd already spent most of their savings on her business. Throughout the process, my parents maintained that they had done what was best for the family. They told everyone I had betrayed them by involving the police, that I had set cops on my own family over a painting. They never once admitted that they'd stolen from me, lied to me, and tried to gaslight me. When confronted, Mom told me outside the courthouse after the final hearing, "You're no longer our daughter. We don't want to see you again." It hurt, but not as much as I expected. The truth was they had never really seen me at all. Once everything was settled, I got my painting back. It was even more beautiful than I remembered, the unknown woman's eyes now seeming to hold a new wisdom. I placed it in a secure bank vault for safekeeping until I could properly care for it myself. That was 6 months ago. I'm in my final year of college now, still focused on earning my degree and honoring Grandpa's faith in me. I haven't spoken to my parents or Olivia since the trial. According to mutual acquaintances, Olivia moved back in with our parents after losing her apartment, and they spin dramatic stories about their ungrateful younger daughter who tore the family apart. After graduation, I plan to get a good job and eventually buy my own place. When I do, I'll hang Grandpa's painting in the most prominent spot, not for its monetary value, but because it represents the one person who always believed I deserved a fair chance. As for my family, I don't know if we'll ever reconcile. Some wounds run too deep, but I know I did the right thing by standing up for myself. Family should support each other, yes, but not by sacrificing one member for another's benefit, not by stealing, lying, and manipulating. Maybe someday they'll understand. Until then, I'll keep moving forward, building my own life and framing my own future, with or without them. And the painting? It watches over me from its temporary home in the vault, the woman's knowing eyes silently saying, "Well done."